Your Honor, omori. If you've ever played it, you'd probably consider it a good game. With great music, interesting characters, and an emotional story, it's sure to leave behind a permanent dent in your frontal cortex. But that's kind of it. When you think of why you like omori, you think of everything in the game but the gameplay. Isn't that unusual for video games? The major point of expressing stories and ideas through gaming, as opposed to books, comics, or, I don't know, music, is the fact that in games you straight up control the character. You make decisions for them in real time, and you can see the impact they gave in real time. This does extend to major plot points like if you want to kill or spare Toriel in Undertale. But the statistically dominant innards of gaming are quick, low-consequence things like whether Kel should annoy someone or rebound for this turn. That decision alone will most likely not impact your experience in any major way. Usually, these decisions create a gameplay loop that is satisfying to the player, justifying playing the game. In Minecraft, if you're skillful enough, you get better resources and therefore have a better chance of survival, / more creative freedom depending on how you approach the game. In Deltarune, the better you are at gathering TP by having bullets barely miss you, the more spells you can cast and the more money you get after the battle ends. You don't particularly remember these points in time as earth-shattering experiences by themselves, but a collection of them brings dopamine to your brain in such a way that, in retrospect, you as a human would call that gameplay session fun. Returning to omori, while the game does check all of the boxes I just mentioned, most people I've talked with didn't actually enjoy the gameplay at all, despite saying that the game itself is incredible. Why is that? And what can we do to fix that? Okay, I wanna prefix this whole thing by saying that I, a 17-year-old white guy, have never played a JRPG with turn-based combat before. In fact, aside from the games I've already mentioned, there are almost no video games in existence that I played for over an hour. All of this to say, I'm discussing the game from the perspective of non-gamers. If you think you can offer a different perspective, you're very welcome to do so in the comments. I'd love to read what you think while I lie in bed like a schoolgirl. A friend of mine introduced me to this game and was present in Discord for pretty much the entire time I was playing. Yeah, he did hear me cry quite a few times. I then went on to force another 4 of my friends to play it and got feedback from them as well. We pretty much all agree on the same thing. This game is slow as hell. While overlooking my friends playing, I've heard their groans upon encountering a foe or entering a cutscene to be audibly louder and louder each time. My god, is this slow. Everything, and I mean everything, has a little animation to it. Opening the menu, closing the menu, choosing a presented option, attacking, doing a follow-up attack, even skipping dialogue, everything has a small, at least 0.2 second long unskippable animation. It's unbelievably irritating when you want to skip text, and this is the top speed you can do it at. Look at all these ease-in, ease-outs. Now imagine waiting for 1,000 of them to play. This is exaggerated exponentially in battles. Suppose, for the sake of the argument, you're pretty late game and are at level 40. Assume then, hypothetically, that you for some reason needed to traverse Otherworld. Perhaps to find a collectible that you missed on your first time, doesn't really matter. Let's then imagine a situation where you encounter an enemy. In this scenario, despite being at level 40, thus having the ability to blow the mentioned enemy to smithereens with a single attack, you still have to wait like 20 seconds for all the little animations to play to you before the battle finally ends. Now, this might be fine for a single enemy, but now imagine, purely hypothetically, that this happens 20 times while visiting a location. By this point, you have now successfully wasted 6.5 minutes of your life for pretty much no reward. Wow. This is for fights that consist of one turn. Imagine when you get to those which require even more waiting while not being entertaining in the slightest. Running away is not an option either. If you do this, especially early on, you'll eventually start lagging behind in XP. So the next time you encounter a boss you won't be able to beat, guess what? You'll need to go back and grind, this time very purposely. The game punishes you for not wanting to indulge in all this, then forces you to do so anyway. By the 20th hour of playtime, this cycle becomes so mind-numbingly irritating. I've literally had to take breaks to keep my brain from imploding. Let's observe how Omori handles fast-paced gameplay as opposed to a game I've already mentioned, Deltarune. Deltarune has the same amount, if not more, cutscenes per square second. What's different about that game though, is it conveys information in a much quicker format. Practically every line of dialogue can be skipped in an instant. Menus and choices are snappy and responsive. Cutscenes don't pad animations and character movements with extra waiting time. Button presses, including those in battle, give you instant feedback. Yes, some have brief animations associated, but they do not in any way affect your ability to interact with the interface. In Deltarune, repeating an action 100 times isn't nearly as irritating as doing the same in Omori. I should know, I'm a mod maker. This is just great. Back to the battles though. Just being slow is far from the only flaw they have. Introducing the mechanic. Being a JRPG, this game's combat is turn-based. I will now proceed to extensively explain its mechanics. The main one, serving as the foundation, is the emotion system. Any in-battle character, friend or foe, can feel three ways: angry, sad, and happy. This basically works like rock, paper, scissors, where angry is good against sad is good against happy, and happy is good against angry. Most enemies have one stage of emotion. Your friends have two, and Omori uniquely has three. You can change anyone's emotions with specific skills or with purchasable items. Each emotion boosts some stats while declining others. The stat variation and the rock, paper, scissors impact augments with each stage of emotion. So for example, depressed is even more effective against happy than just sad. Each character has a set of skills that do different things. Casting a skill uses a character's juice, which is a meter basically parallel to the health bar. Each time a friend takes damage, the energy meter increases, which is completely different from health and juice. The energy you get is used for follow-ups. Every time after your friend attacks, you can use one of their 3 follow-ups. They all do different things, and each one costs 3 energy. A unique follow-up is the release energy, which costs 10 energy, and has all the characters attacking together in a cute animation. There's also speed, which determines the order of actions in a turn. You have to know each character's speed to make good combos. If you mess it up, you might completely turn the tide of battle to be against your favor. The catch is, the game doesn't let you see anyone's in-battle speed, ever. Its relevance isn't even explained properly anywhere. This is obviously very overwhelming, especially to those playing a video game for the first time. You get a total of 20 minutes to memorize all of this, after which you don't get any refreshments aside from a tutorial book. But of course, what will rejuvenate my long-term memory more than a giant wall of bland white text on a black background? On top of everything I just said, most of the follow-ups aren't even consistent. Some of them majorly change after crucial points in the game, almost completely trivializing their usage. It's no wonder players like myself often don't even bother to use any of the mechanics, and instead just hold down the attack button hoping for the best. And here we have the most subjective section of them all. This isn't so much a take on the game's philosophy as it is a critique of a specific part I dislike. I will explicitly mention some things that happen like mid-game-ish, but honestly none of this has any practical bearing on the plot. You could delete the entire discussy of this section and none of the emotional components of Omori would change. Okay, you've been warned. 3, 2, 1. Enter Sweetheart's castle, and by extension her dungeon. The whole relevance of this British oppressor for us is that she captures the party and puts them in the prison cell. Hey, you think to yourself, this is merely a video game, which means I'm not actually in jail. Little does your innocent soul know, by the time you've completely escaped, your mind will have aged 1,000 lives. Literally every flaw I mentioned so far is 10 times worse here. Battles now have an extra 3-second long line of mandatory dialogue. Cutscenes are frequent and especially annoying. There are 4, count them, 4 quests that add nothing and exist purely for padding. And those are just the things to do inside the castle. Going out, you can do things like run around with no thoughts in your head and sit through layers of dialogue, which again, have no meaning. All of this to appease some statue or something? I mean, at this point, does it even matter under what coat of paint the gameplay lies, if it's this boring and repetitive? Let me put this into perspective. It took me somewhere around 2.5 hours to drag myself through this section, and not a single dopamine particle entered my brain throughout. There was not a single fun or memorable thing I can outline that comes from the fact they're in Sweetheart's dungeon / castle / front yard / whatever. Okay, I know this video seems way more negative than any other opinion of mine I've published, but I wouldn't be so frustrated if I didn't absolutely adore the rest of the game. Omori is still an incredible emotional experience that I think about lying in bed to this day, even 6 months after completing it. In the end, it does not emotionally matter to me how long its fights or animations or cutscenes are. The reason I'm getting mad at these things is because the game is like this close to being perfect. I know that many people abandoned their playthroughs or refused to start one outright, simply because they saw how exhausting the gameplay is. I think it's sad that some people didn't get to experience this amazing game because of this, and I'm absolutely 100% blaming the game here. Well, as we say in vaguely post-Soviet countries, if you criticize something, suggest how to improve it. So that's what I'm gonna do. Welcome to The Paper Person's How I Would Make Omori If I Made Omori. Firstly, the dialogue. Hey, too much padding for too little substance. You wouldn't hire a lawyer to resolve a dispute over $300, would ya? Go right ahead and map a button to skipping everything, including all animations, text appearance, and of course, follow-ups. See how smooth that is? Secondly, the cutscenes. Yikes, that's a lot of sleep time. Don't be afraid to remove most of the wait times and have characters performing actions and talking at the same time. Toby Fox did it in 2015, so you'll figure out how to do it right now. Thirdly, the fights. Those are not fundamentally flawed, so don't change them too much. Do add more tutorials though. My personal advice, while walking over to Basil's, have the 3 emotion-filled Sprout moles as tutorials. Then, when you meet ye old Sprout Molensi, make him the emotion boss that actually tests the knowledge you just got. Then, put follow-up introductions somewhere later in the game and present them in a similar slow fashion, with the first actual boss of the game, again, testing your knowledge. You can keep the follow-up upgrades, but in a way that doesn't force you to relearn them completely 3 times. A boost in numbers will do just fine. Fourthly, the Hellish Castle. Actually, with every other issue gone, the castle should be bearable enough to not be an issue. Hooray! What a wonderful session of theoretical game development we just had. This has been your host, The Paper Person, and I will see you in like another 6 months. Bye bye!
Quick channel update. Wow, the first video blew up. Thank you for all the support, likes and comments, and for 2,000 subscribers. It's always been my dream to talk about stuff I like and have an audience for it. Thanks to you, my plans are now to continue making videos for quite some time. And if the stars align just right, I might be able to even start making money to pay for therapy. I also have a Discord server now, link in the description. It's pretty cool. Join it right now. Bye for a second time.